This is Jocko Podcast number 89 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
I was sitting in my tactical operations center in Ramadi, alone. I was staring at a document on my computer, and I had to keep wiping tears from my face as I read it. The document had been submitted to me by the Delta platoon commander. It was an award recommendation for Michael Mansour. And the award was the Medal of Honor for Mikey. He had been sitting on an outcropping of a roof in South Ramadi on an overwatch, and a grenade, which had been thrown from an unseen location, actually hit him in the chest and fell to the ground in front of him. And he could have jumped away from the grenade, and he could have saved himself. But if he had done that, his teammates that were positioned next to him, they would have been exposed to that blast. So instead of moving away from the grenade, Mikey jumped on the grenade. He smothered it, and he absorbed its lethal explosion, thereby saving our teammates, and at the same time sacrificing his own life. The morning that it happened, September 29th, 2006, I got a call from the battalion commander from the 1st to the 506th, an outstanding officer and leader that I respected and admired. And this element from Delta Platoon had been in the field receiving fire and returning fire most of the morning, which was nothing new or nothing unusual, but it had escalated. And I knew that there had been trouble, and when the colonel called me, he told me that there had been a bad fight. And then he went down the list of my men, describing quickly what their wounds were and what their status was, and pretty much telling me that they were going to be okay. Until he got to Mikey. And I could hear a shift in his voice. It became very grave and very serious, and I could hear the sympathy in it. And I knew what was coming. Mikey got hit bad. He got hit really bad, Jocko. And I don't think he's going to make it. And my heart jumped through my chest, and then it sank back down to my stomach, and then erupted into my brain in a maddening rush of anger and horror and gut-wrenching sadness. And I grabbed all that insanity and all that emotion, and I pulled it back into my mind, and I held it down there while I uttered the only words that I could muster. Roger that, sir. And when the Delta platoon commander, who's one of my best friends and a very close friend of Mikey's, When he called me, we were mechanical. We had work to do. He debriefed me. I listened. We discussed the follow-up and the next steps and the resupply and the operational impact of the casualties. We held it together. And the next day, I talked to one of the SEAL officers that Mikey had saved. I talked to him on the phone because he was in Germany already with the other SEAL that had been wounded badly on the rooftop, both of whom would have been dead if it hadn't been for Mikey. They were only wounded, and because of that, they were heading home. And when I talked to this young officer, he explained to me what happened with perfect clarity. Mikey could have jumped away and saved himself, but he did not. His only movement was toward the grenade. Mikey did not hesitate. What kind of a man does that? And when I was a brand new guy at SEAL Team 1, I began to learn and understand what kind of man did that. You see, as a young enlisted SEAL at SEAL Team 1, there were 2 pictures on the quarterdeck. Just 2. The pictures were of SEAL Team 1's Medal of Honor recipients, Lieutenant Bob Carey and Petty Officer 2nd Class Mike Thornton. And we young guys, we memorized their names, as well as the name of the SEAL Team 2 Medal of Honor recipient, Lieutenant Tom Norris. And we read their citations over and over again and debriefed them amongst ourselves. But we young enlisted SEALs, we focused on Mike Thornton. He was an enlisted man, like we were. And we had heard about him. And he was a legend, not only for his actions, but for his reputation as a SEAL, as an operator, as a leader, as an all-around badass frogman that we all aspired to be. As a young enlisted SEAL, he was the mark. He was the example. He was Mike Thornton. And a few months after checking into SEAL Team 1, I was in Virginia Beach. I was going to a school at the Navy base there on Little Creek, and one day after work, we went to a place called Papa's Pub. Now, mind you, I wasn't even old enough to get in, but the chief snuck me in there. And as we were sitting there having some food and talking, a handful of other SEALs walked in, and they were wearing their full dress choker whites. And one of them was a big monster of a man, and he had a rack of ribbons up to his shoulder and the Medal of Honor around his neck, and I knew exactly who it was. It was Mike Thornton. Right there in front of me, the ultimate SEAL, the ultimate hero standing there in the flesh. And my chief looked and he saw how awestruck I was, and he told me to go over there and say hi, which I did. Now, again, I was a new guy. I didn't even have my trident yet. And at SEAL Team 1 at the time, as I have accounted over and over again, we new guys pretty much got treated like worthless scum. But when I introduced myself to Mike Thornton, he slapped me on the back and said, "Welcome to the teams." And then he told me I'm from Team 1 too. I'm from Team 1 too. And then he bought me a beer and treated me like I was his brother, the man himself, treating a pathetic new guy like me like I was one of his long-lost buddies. And I never forgot that attitude and that humility. And I would see Mike Thornton occasionally over the years, and I swear it always seemed like he remembered me, at least in my mind. But years later, he actually did get to know me a little bit when Mikey Monsoor's parents received the Medal of Honor from President Bush in the White House. I was with Mike Thornton again. And after that solemn ceremony, well, we went and we drank and we raised hell and we raised our glasses to Mikey and to the rest of our fallen brothers. And Mike Thornton treated me and the rest of our task unit the same way he treated me when I first met him. Like we were all brothers. And that night, now that I had seen combat myself and seen with my own eyes the bravery and the selflessness and the sacrifice that is the very core of our community, I finally understood why Mike Thornton treated us all like brothers. It's because we were. And we are. And with that, it is an absolute honor to have here tonight a hero, a legend, a patriot, and someone I'm so proud to be able to call brother, retired SEAL and Medal of Honor recipient, Mike Thornton. Sir, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Jocko. Thanks, Al. And it's my honor to be here, too. You are an unbelievable warrior as Mikey Monsoor. I tell you, my love goes out to George and Sally and everybody there. But that was an unbelievable day to have Tommy and me there, and Colin and Todd Stenoff and all the other teammates there. It was a lot different than when I received my medal. So, but it was an honor that these young men are getting the respect that they deserve so much, and then to bring the whole team on. When I received my medal, it was only Tommy, and Tommy received his medal, it was only me. So, God bless the Navy. They're finally getting it right, and honoring these great young men like Mikey Monsoor and Ed Byers.
So you recently had a book come out, which is awesome, and you wrote it with your fellow teammate and fellow Medal of Honor winner Tom Norris, and also with another SEAL, Dick Couch, and the book is called By Honor Bound. And for me, I was talking about this before the podcast, before we started recording. You even though you want to know get these really good debriefs in the SEAL teams, and you'd think that there was a vault with all these great debriefs and that explained to you everything that happened on certain missions, especially highly important missions, you'd think that existed, but it actually doesn't exist. And for me, this book was like the detailed debrief that I always wanted to have, not only of the operation that you did with Tommy, but also the one that Tommy conducted by himself. and both of them are just so well detailed in here, and it's just a phenomenal book to get that kind of granular detail of what you lived through. That, like I said, even being in the SEAL teams myself for 20 years, I never had as good of an understanding at all as I have of these operations now. So thank you for writing it. And, I want to dive into it a little bit, because that's kind of what I do on this podcast, is dive into these books.
I hear you.
And so it's, I had to jump around a little bit, but just talking about your background and where you came from growing up in South Carolina.
Yeah, correct. I was born and raised in the hills of South Carolina, and my father was my hero of all times. He only had a 6th grade education, and my dad was in the Philippines from 1939, and he got left in the Philippines after MacArthur pulled out, and he was one of the raiders over there. They did a movie, and like I say, he only had a 6th grade education, but he was a guy that everybody respected. He had his own company, and I used to ask guys, "Why have you been working for my father for 30 years?" He said, because he. And my dad always told me this, and that's what I tried to do when I was in the teams. You take care of your people. Your people will take care of you. And my mother gave us love and religion, but Daddy was hard as rocks, but you had the greatest respect for that man, and everybody else that knew my father had the same respect for him.
Now, you mentioned that your dad had a 6th grade education. Obviously, he was a hero to you and a successful guy, and was able to put things together in his life. And, did he ever talk about what he did in the PI?
Not until I had been wounded several times, and during my 2nd tour overseas. And he said, "I think you'll understand this." And I said, "Daddy, I understood the first time I was ever wounded." So, wounded in 1939 or wounded in 1969 or wounded in today's war, I think it brings a reality that war sucks any way you look at it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I guess your dad wanted you to earn being able to hear good stories from him, but you got to get wounded before I'm going to tell you anything.
More than once.
That's a hard man right there. Now, I'm going to the book a little bit. This is you talking. I didn't do that well in school. I couldn't read, and I still have problems with it. I'm dyslexic. Back then, they didn't call it that. You were just dumb. For me, it meant that I simply couldn't keep up in school. I did okay in math, but that was probably the only thing. I loved history. Otherwise, I did poorly. I had to repeat my sophomore year in high school, and that really hurt my pride. So it's no wonder I got in with the wrong crowd and started getting into trouble. Nothing serious, but we were mischievous. Southern country boys drinking beer and making bad decisions. The sheriff was out to the house a few times, and there was a time or two in juvenile court, and I cut a lot of classes. I had 72 absences in my senior year in high school. That's a pretty legit record.
Well, you could only miss 30 and you automatically failed, but I didn't think they wanted to see me coming back. So, to that dyslexia, and thank God we found out what it really is. And actually, I've never even read the book. My wife's read it to me 5 times, and I'd make the changes and stuff like that. But I do have it on tape, and if I hear something, I understand it. But what I'm trying to say in that is to let young men know you may have it tough, but you can redo this. So I've been a successful businessman. I went all the way through the ranks, and I got a commission, and I did this. And I'm just trying to say there's only one, and that's what I tell these kids when they're going through training, but you know that. There's only one person that's going to stop you, and that's yourself. There's always to get across that obstacle, under it, around it, on top of it, one way or the other. So don't let something stop you, and for you to move forward and make a better life for yourself and your family.
Awesome words right there. Now, speaking of moving forward, it's you had like the classic case of the judge telling you, "All right, son, you can either join the Navy, or we're going to find a place that you're not going to like so much as home."
Well, I didn't know this. 20 years later, my father finally told me him and the juvenile judge they were friends with each other. And he said, "I'm going to let you make your first major decision. You go to juvenile. basically 6 months in juvenile hall, or I could turn around and make the first major decision in my life. And I saw that crazy movie, The Five Sullivan Brothers, during World War II. Then I saw the movie The Navy Frogman with Richard Whitmark. And I turned around and I said, I've always wanted to be a UDT frogman. And I saluted, and the guy that enlisted me was a second-class machinist mate. And Ned, his name was Ned Johnson. And when he retired, he was back as an E9. He was a senior enlisted for recruiting in the state of South Carolina. And he tells everybody how he made Mike Thornton who he was today.
That's outstanding. So you come in, and did you just went boot camp and then straight to buds? Or you guys didn't have buds, you guys called it UDT training replacement?
Underwater demolition recruit training. I was supposed to go. I was trying to go straight from there. They said no. You have to go to outside. Like I say, my dyslexia was pretty bad, and I had to get a 10-point waiver just to get into the teams. And they must have needed people pretty damn bad, because I finally got my waiver. And I was in Hawaii, and I came back to Coronado and went through training.
And I was thinking about, going through training. Here's a quote from you coming through training. We had some instructors who were not only good teachers, but they were real characters. There was Vince Oliveira, who is part American Indian and a plank holder at SEAL Team 1. He called us pale faces, and we stood in awe and fear of instructor Oliveira. Then there was Dick Allen, a black SEAL, who was the Navy boxing champion. He once sparred with Muhammad Ali. When Ali was asked once who hit him the hardest, he said it was a chief petty officer in the U.S. Navy named Dick Allen. And then there was instructor Terry Moy, who we called Mother Moy. It seemed as if he was always watching us, making sure everything we did was that we put out 100%. So what I was thinking about during this was when I went through in 1991, and there was there were some rules in place, but also the instructors kind of did what they wanted to, and the command wasn't watching them. There's more rules and oversight now. I've seen that with my own eyes. But I can't even imagine what it was like when you were going through them. The instructors must have just been able to do whatever the hell they wanted to do to you guys.
I tell you, Vince Oliveira, the most sadistic son of a bitch I ever met in my life. I tell you. And I was just with Terry Moy the last 2 days. Of course, this is reunion weekend. And
right.
Terry still looks like a gladiator as he did back then. And Dick Allen used to hang us from the pull-up bar, and he'd punch us in the stomach. But I tell you, if you didn't keep your hands loose, if you didn't keep your hands loose, he'd kill you. And, of course, Dick and Vince and Dick both have passed, but their memories. And it's a funny thing about life itself, and it's not what you've done. It's the respect you want to gain from the teammates. And Dick and Terry and Vince all gain my respect and my love. And as long as Mike Thornton's alive, the stories will continue going on. So that's all I want from my peers, to remember who Mike Thornton is. And that's what those guys taught me.
Yeah. Were those guys Vietnam vets, or were they Korean War vets? Both? A little bit of everything?
Vietnam vets. Then there was Tommy Hatchett in there, too. They used to call Tommy and I, after I got in the teams, a salt and pepper guy. He's a great big old black guy, and as strong as a damn ox. And, actually, Vince was one of the original SEALs in 1962. And he went over to Nam, but of course back then they didn't know what they were going to do with the SEALs during that period of time.
So you get done with buds, and I'm going to the book here. There were 22 guys who graduated in my class, 18 from the original 129. Mm-hmm. I remember how lucky and proud I felt as I was given orders to SEAL Team 1. Even back then, it was no small thing being a Navy SEAL, but it's one thing to be a SEAL and yet another to do the work of a SEAL. I thought that was an important little highlight there of, like, when you get done with buds, it's just the beginning, really.
Correct. It's just you just cracked open the door. So then you got to go through the damn door. And after you get through the door, you got to prove yourself. And like you were saying, we were nobody back then. You know, if you hadn't had a couple of tours of Vietnam, you were just trash as far as they were concerned.
Yeah. So going to the book, my first platoon was Charlie Platoon. We were in country from 1969 from December 1969 through July 1970. We worked out of a place called Dong Island, and it was a great deployment. We had solid platoon officers, and our platoon leading petty officer was Barry Enoch, one of the finest SEAL operators at Team 1. When I made my first deployment, he was my sea daddy. It was the same for all of us on our first combat tour, and it was an active tour. Seems like every other night we'd be out, and most of the time we made contact. I remember we took down a few province-level Viet Cong cadre types, and one time we had a good intelligence. We were able to take down an entire VC grenade factory. It was great. So that was your first deployment. When you talk about Barry Enoch, and actually Hal Kuykendall talks about him as well, he says, us as new guys, even the veterans, we worshipped Barry Enoch. He was a great leader and a great teacher. What was it about him that made him just that made you guys remember him and revere him so much?
Well, I think it's like you were talking about me in your great introduction, which I don't deserve that. But Barry was a leader. He took care of everybody. And he's a guy kind of like I looked up to my father. He was my sea daddy, and he was always there for all of us. And me and last night, Tom Boyhan and me and Wayne Hampton and Mike Lacaze and Hal Kuykendall, we're all getting a picture together and remembering the great guys. And we were talking about Barry. Of course, Barry passed away a few years ago, and he's another guy. You know, it's like I say, he'll always be in all our conversations, and was somebody we all looked up to. You know. So it's the great leadership. I mean, he showed us, and not just the leadership as a leader, but the leadership he showed us to try to be a better person.
Mm-hmm. And that deployment, what were you guys doing? Were you guys deploying off of boats? Were you guys going in helicopters? Were you guys going on foot patrols? A little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. Foot patrols, basically sampans, whalers. By that time, we finally got the LSSCs, which were in the late, and then the medium SEAL support craft. Of course, we had the Mighty Mo. A lot of our stuff was...
What was the Mighty Mo?
Oh, it was a big Mike A,
okay.
And it had it had all the rebarb about 20 inches out, so if you got hit by an RPG, it'd explode there instead of going through the hull. We did a lot of, like I was working down at the Sea Float with Steve Friss with the KCSs, because back then we didn't have that many SEALs, so we would help each other. If they say we need help, we'd converse our people right around, and then Tom would send the guys that he felt should be going. So we'd, like Rich Solano, myself, and a bunch of other guys would go out and help other platoons and stuff.
And were you a 60 gunner?
I was a 60. I had a Stoner 60, and I carried a Car 15, but I always carried a Swedish K with me all the time, and a pistol. I always had a backup, as I call it.
Backup and a backup to your backup.
Backup, yeah. So, you know, so we have funny things, you know, and you learn from each other. So it's like that. When we hit that grenade factory, Mikey Sands jumped out, and he had a 60, and he didn't lock down. He didn't lock down his hitch, and as he jumped out of the boat, his barrel fell out in the water in the river, and he's down there digging. He's yelling, "Give me one of your guns!" And I said, "Hell no, I'm keeping all my guns." So, you know, we all learned, and Mike was a great M60 guy. He saved our asses many times, but everybody did their job. It's just as you were saying a while ago, it was a team effort. And my life was saved by people like Mike Lacaze and other people in our platoon, and we backed each other up all the time.
And that was a super active. Actually, Hal Kuykendall was talking about you here in the book. This is Hal talking. I can remember more than one firefight where we were shooting and ducking, sometimes more ducking than shooting. But Mike would be right there working that 60 with a big grin on his face. There were plenty of times when I was really scared, but I'm not sure Mike ever was. He was reliable and brave, but I'm not sure he ever knew or understood fear like the rest of us. He was a great teammate, and my God, he was strong. None of us could believe how much ammo he carried. Sometimes he'd go out with 1,000 rounds or more. That's close to 80 pounds of just ammo. And he'd swim canals with that load. He'd just shrug and say, "You don't want your 60 gunner to run out of ammo, do you?" We got through a pretty active deployment with no one getting killed. Then a couple of guys stayed behind to break in the new platoon while the rest of us packed up and left. They were 2 of our best, and one of them was killed in a helo crash with 3 other SEALs. We took it hard when Rich Solano was killed, but I think Mike took it the hardest. Mike was a guy who really cared for his teammates. So even with all that action, you guys went through the deployment with, what did you take a few wounded guys? But
yeah,
no one
we had
got
a
killed?
few, but nobody was killed. And actually, I was down at Sea Float, and Rich Solano was working with a Gulf platoon, I think. And then that was when the helicopter went down. And of course, when you come off a hot LZ, you're supposed to shut down your aircraft and check the rotor blades, because back then the rotor blades could have a hole and it could last for 30 minutes or 45 or an hour. And the pilot of the helo wanted to get back for a birthday party or something, and the helo fell, and then actually Rich was killed, and Derlin was killed, and Toby Thomas was killed. Who else was there? Gardner was killed. So that was one of our biggest. We lost 5 guys that day, not 4. We lost 5. And I went down and identified the bodies. And it was, I've only had one bad dream in my whole life, and it was after identifying that, because Rich's whole face was completely gone. And the only way I could identify him, he had a scar on his arm. And but a loss of any teammate, as you know as well as I do, like Mikey, and every time I lose even a new kid today, which I've been out speaking to their class and stuff like that, you lose a little bit more of your heart. I don't know how much more of my heart I got to lose, but it takes it out of you. It's I don't want to see anybody ever get hurt, or especially a loss of a loved one. And their lives are just as important to me with the new kids today as Rich and all those guys were important to me back then.
You come home from that deployment, and you go into SEAL Team 1 cadre, which we actually have talked about on here with Roger Hayden, because when I was at SEAL Team 1 and I was in training cell, we still called it cadre, and that was, 20-something years later. And I never even made the connection. And Roger and I talked about the fact that, some of the training that you guys implemented back there, the point man course where you're walking through and the tripwires are there and all that, we still did that. A lot of the demo we still did. And so that's what you did when you got home. You went into that training cell, being cadre and teaching. And you mentioned here that you learned a lot being an instructor, and I always agree with that. In fact, when I was in the SEAL teams, no one wanted to go to the training department, right? We all wanted to just deploy. So when I took over the training, I always told guys, look, if you want to be, if you want to master what you do, you got to go and teach it. And you also mentioned Al Huey in here. And when I went through Buds, when we were at San Clemente Island, every night when the sun goes down, we'd sing the song, "Good Night, Al Huey, Good Night, Al Huey, Good Night, Al Huey, wherever you may be." And I never knew, and still don't know, who Al Huey is.
Well, Al
Other than the camp is called Al Huey. It's called Camp Al Huey out there. And honestly, I make my kids sing this song. When the sun goes down, me and my kids, we sing this song.
Well, I'm sure you've heard of Dave Shibley, Commodore Shibley, and Al and Dave were best of friends, and Al was another mentor like Barry Enoch to me, and they went through class 2 of UDT back in the 50s, and they were all in Korea and stuff, and he led by example again, but I mean, it's kind of like when he talks, you better be like E.F. Hutton. You better be listening and keeping your ears wide open. And just as Al told me one day, he says, good Lord gave you one mouth, 2 ears, and 2 eyes. So use 80% of that and keep the other one shut for 20%. You'll be all right. So.
And then you from cadre, you had a chance. You went back and deployed again, but you went to Thailand. And what were you doing, teaching the Thai SEALs?
We trained the Thai SEALs. I was along with Dick Flanagan, and one of the finest officers, as Tom Boyhan was. A great officer, great leader. And Al was with us on that, and that's the reason why Al and I were so close.
Okay.
And we trained the Thai UDT and the SEAL Team Tactics, and then they went up and they worked off the borders. So that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, and understood. And then you got home from that, and now it looked like the war in Vietnam was kind of winding down, and there weren't full SEAL platoons deploying anymore.
No more SEAL platoons. Only basically what we were doing we were sending enlisted LDNN advisors, and a bunch of the guys that were over there with me on that tour was at the reunion, and it was kind of funny to get together and talk with all of them, and talk about. But we've lost a lot of those guys, which have passed through age or cancer or something, and it's one good thing about the reunion. None of us are getting any damn younger, so you better get out and see your shipmates anytime you get a chance. So,
yeah. The LDNN you mentioned, and just so everyone knows what that those are like Vietnamese, South Vietnamese SEALs.
And the LDNN stands for Lui Ninh Dai is what it actually in Vietnamese.
What does that mean, like a warrior from the sea or something like that?
Yeah, it's type, yep.
So you get a chance to go back again, and this is funny because typical SEAL, it's like, oh, we need you to go back on deployment again. Yes, I'll go. Please send me. I'm going back to the book. So when I got to Vietnam this time, I spent close to a week at Nha Trang working with the LDNNs there, getting a feel for what they were doing in the field. I'd worked with the Vietnamese SEALs on my first tour back in 1969, and I saw a few familiar faces. You have to hand it to those guys. For them, there were no combat rotations. Life was combat, 24/7, year in, year out. They fought until they were killed. Or, as it worked out in the end, we lost the war. So those are the guys you're working with. And I think you get into the relationship that you formed with these guys, which was, they were all their brothers.
Yeah, you took care of them, they took care of you. And, of course, the reason I feel that Tommy and I are still alive today is because of Dane and Quan, which I explain in the book. I'd worked with them on previous chores and many operations, and they were there. They're just like one of us. I mean, they took care of me, so that's the reason I handpicked those two guys.
That was Dang and Quan. Those were guys that you had worked with before.
Yeah,
Vietnamese SEALs, and so you get to Tui Nan. Am I saying that right?
Tui Nan, that's correct.
Tui Nan. Okay, so you get to Tui Nan. This is where you're going to be working out of. And again, you're not in a SEAL platoon. This is a totally different situation. And what you had there in Tui Nan, if I gathered it all correctly, you had 5 enlisted SEALs from SEAL Team 1. And then you had 2 SEAL Team 2 officers. And then plus with those 2 SEAL Team 2 officers who sound like they were more junior guys. Maybe it was their first deployment. But then Tommy Norris showed up as well as the OIC.
Yeah. Shibley, Commodore Shibley, he had all the SEALs, UDT, EOD, divers, everybody. And then Tommy Nelson was our lieutenant commander in 03, and he was the head of all the SEALs. Tommy was the senior SEAL operator in the country. Then we had Ryan McCumbee and another lieutenant. It was there. Then they were all East Coast guys.
Right.
Now we had I think we had more like 18 enlisted guys.
Oh, okay.
And we broke it up. And Gary Chamberlain and Harry Kanakua went with Lieutenant Huth down one thing. Then Ryan McCumbee was our boss, and I stayed up. So everybody had many tours that went down south, and I had the most tours, and I stayed up north with Ryan McCumbee. Then Tommy would go back and forth to run operations. Of course, it was hard to get AOs approved because it was pretty, at that time we were fighting in Quantree and Way City and all that stuff, and they were trying to overtake it, but we still were able to get our ops in.
And you had what, 2 squads of LDNN, and what made up a squad of LDNN?
Approximately, I think we had more LDNNs than we did, but we separated those guys too. I know when we went on the operation, Woody we always had a SEAL, as you know, on an insertion extraction craft, and Woody had we only had 3 LDNNs with us, but he had another 6 or 8 on the boat if we needed resupply something.
So and I got to mention this because again, it's half the book of By Honor Bound is we've been throwing Tommy Norris's name around here, and when he showed up to work with you guys, he had been in country for some period of time, and he had done this multiple pilot rescue operations.
Correct. The Bat 21 mission, and Tommy was. Let's say that I knew about his reputation and he knew about my reputation, and it was kind of funny. Tommy and I only operated one time, and that was that operation, but we were, of course, still best of friends. And I know when we resubmitted, Tommy was put in for a medal, and it was resubmitted, and then he was upgraded to the Medal of Honor later on, and greatest friend any man could ever ask for. And I look back on the officers, the leadership we had on, like I was saying, Tom Boyhead and Captain Shively and Tommy and Ryan McCumbee and Norm Carley, and even when we were in 6th with Marcinko and stuff like that, it was we had some great leaders, and all those guys took care of their people. That's what I really looked up to them for always being there for the troops. They may chew your ass out, but nobody else is going to. So
now, once Tommy shows up, you start getting the mission tasking for this mission that becomes the mission, and the Paris peace talks were going on. But Tom was saying that there's no, at the operational level, you guys were like, oh, that's great, but it's not changing anything for us on the ground. Meanwhile, they're attacking Way City, and it's just hard. And so Tom goes down. He gets called down by the Commodore Shively to get a mission tasking, and this is Tom Norris talking. Uncle Dave had me take a seat in his office. That's what you guys called the Commodore, apparently.
Yeah,
Uncle Dave. I never called any of my Commodores uncle, at least not to their faces. Uncle Dave had me take a seat in his office, and I could tell he had something on his mind. Tom, he said, the Vietnamese commander of the LDNN wants to run a SEAL reconnaissance mission to the mouth of the Quan Viet River. Is that right? Quantree River. Specifically, he and his superiors want to know about the defenses and enemy disposition around Quantree Naval Base, and he wants a Vietnamese LDNN officer to head up the reconnaissance team. I want you to run the operation to ensure the mission gets done properly, but this needs to be seen as a Vietnamese operation. So that was the tasking, doing a reconnaissance.
Correct.
Pretty normal operation. I mean, it's pretty standard. It sounds like you guys were running those type of operations fairly regularly.
Yeah, basically the NVA had already moved across the Qua Viet River, so that was we knew that, and we knew, and they were trying to take over Quantree again, and they attacked on Way City. That was in April, and this was in October when this thing was going down. So we knew it was hot and heavy up there, but Tommy said yes. You never said no to Uncle Dave, so.
And so you guys decide, or Tom, lets you know, hey, let's do a small group. You're going to take 5 guys.
Correct.
2 Americans and 3 Vietnamese SEALs.
Correct.
Obviously, the 2 are you and Tom Norris, and then the three guys that you're going to take with you, the 3 Vietnamese that you're going to take with you. 2 of them were your hand-selected guys,
Correct.
Dang and Quan.
Right.
And then there was another officer. The other guy was an officer, right?
Correct.
and he was Lieutenant. I've heard you tell the story in here. He's called Lieutenant Thornton.
Yeah,
you always call him Ty.
Well, yeah, but we put a different name in there because he kind of made the operation go south.
Got it. So here's the basic concept of operations.
Well, really the funny part of it, Tommy said, I'll do the mission if you let me choose who I want to take. Because back then we had a rotation, basically, where everybody get a chance to go in the field. And I always went in the field with the new guys and stuff. And he said, I'd like to make a choice. And Uncle Dave said, well, I bet you I know who it is. And he said, well, we've never operated together. And he said, I bet it's just Mike Thornton. And he said, yes, sir, that's who I want to take with me on that operation. And actually, Woody was supposed to be going in on that operation. And but we took Woody on the insertion extraction means of transportation.
And that's Bill Woodruff, who you talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll get into what his role was. Here's the overview of the mission, and this is Tom Norris talking. It was not a particularly difficult mission, and it was certainly something we'd done before, so we knew the drill. In general, it was about a 50-mile transit from Tuinan up the Cuivette River in our boats with a max speed of about 8 knots. That was a little more than 6 hours. So you're talking about a 6-hour transit. The plan was to get well out to sea so no one on the beach could know which direction we were heading, north or south. Once we turned, in this case north, we'd make our way up the coast, then turn west back into shore. Then we hoped to be on station off the southern bank of the Cuivette River soon as possible after dark. We'd then leave the junks and paddle in close to shore on rubber boats, and then swim ashore from the rubber boats. We'd insert, do our job, and get out before first light. We didn't have to be back at Tuinan before first light, but we sure as heck wanted to be back across the beach and away from the coast before sunup. I was told I'd have offshore Navy support in the way of 2 destroyers, so if we were running a little late in getting out of there, I'd have some friendly on-call fire support. So that's a real standard mission that, when I first got to Team 1, we did that, not the exact same thing, and not real, but we train it all the time. You're going to get on, Mark 5s, and you're going to have your Zodiacs on there, then you're going to get a little closer to the beach, and once you get close to the beach, you drop off the Zodiacs, then you get a little bit closer to the beach, and then the last thing you do is get out the boat, swim in, you go do your operation. So kind of standard stuff. And, he says it's not something you hadn't done before.
Correct.
Here's what you were talking about when you're talking about the LDNNs. Going back to the book, the LDNNs came in all varieties of experience and capability and courage. On this operation, we had 3 very good ones. Lieutenant Kwan was a first-rate LDNN officer, and Deng and Kwan, this other Kwan is an enlisted LDNN, no relation, were 2 guys I'd worked with on my first tour and was with them again in Tuinan. Deng and Kwan were good to go, but the problem was Kwan, the officer. And
Kwan was hurt, and that's the reason the other officer.
Yeah, the problem was that Lieutenant Kwan, he liked to get after it a little bit sometimes.
Well, it's like all of us. Maybe he had too much to drink the night before.
And so, he get in some kind of accident, or what happened to him?
He was riding in a whaler, ran into the pier. He hit his head, and he busted both his eyes, and he couldn't even see. They were both completely shut. So this is how we got the other new officer, which I've never worked with. But I'd worked many tours. I mean, not many tours, but many operations with the other 2 guys. And I'd worked with Kwan, and he was really good. But, of course, he was unable to make the op. So we brought in another young officer, which I'd never operated with.
And this other, just so everyone knows as we're going through this, the other officer that you now brought on that you hadn't worked with before, his name was Lieutenant Thwan.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
No, but I'm not going to give his real name out.
Got the Vietnamese speaker in here tightening me up. So you had the Navy was out to sea. The 2 things the Navy was supposed to help you with was helping you guys do navigation, because
Correct.
In this time, no GPS. It's so easy now. I'm embarrassed by how easy it is. And obviously fire support if you need it.
Yeah. Basically, what they were supposed to do is vector us in, and that's where each ship takes a radar plunge and they shoot it in, and they see where we are in the junks, which are 39-foot concrete junks is what then they would see where we were. Then they'd shoot us at azimuth, and then we would take our compass and we'd go in there. One of the ships shooting is they were trying to overtake Quan Tri again, and he left and went down south to help give gunfire support to help the Vietnamese Army and Marine Corps to hold off the NVA. And when that one guy shot the azimuth, and he was about 3 degrees off, but when you're 15 miles off the beach, 3 degrees is a lot.
Yeah.
And everybody said, the CEO said, that's the river, right? Actually, it was the Ben Ha River, which was actually in North Vietnam. So when we went and inserted, we were way north of the Qua Viet.
Now, you had talked about Bill Woodruff, Woody. You're referring to him as an important point here, and this is something we always try to hold true to. You would always put like a seal with your assets if you can manage it. So you got a seal out there on the boats that are going to be recovering you, because it's a guy that you know, it's a guy that you trust, and you know he's not going to leave you hanging no matter what.
Hanging, that's right.
And that's a good lesson learned for anybody doing operations right now. I don't care what unit you're with. If you're in the Marine Corps and you're using an Army asset, try and put a liaison officer with the Army. If you're in the Army and you're using a Marine Corps asset, try and put a liaison officer. Same thing with special operations, because those are the guys that speak your language. They're going to be able to predict what you're going to do if things are going sideways. It's just a smart move to do. And then you talked about how these things started going wrong, and you're off the coast, and instead of being where you thought you were, you're at the Ben Hai River, which is basically
south of the Ben Hai. So Tommy and I discussed it, and he said, well, we'll go ahead and go in. We'll do what we call a horseshoe. We'll go in so many clicks and go north, and then go back to the east, back to the ocean, and try to, if we can pick up, if we could do it. We were doing a body snatch too. Of course, of course, by a body snatch, you get your best intelligence that way. So,
man, we used to do direct action missions to go capture bad guys, but we didn't call them body snatches. And I'm kind of wishing we did. It sounds a lot better to do body snatch. Maybe I should have named those body snatching operations. I would have felt a lot better about it. So tactically, you're going in, it's pretty normal. You swim in, it's pretty normal. You get on the beach, and here we go back to the book. This is you talking. I was carrying the Starlight Scope, a bulky first-generation night vision device that allowed you to see relatively well at night. It was the size of a loaf of bread and weighed 8 pounds. Tommy told me to scout the beach area to see if I could find any of the features we were looking for or expecting to find, like the mouth of the river. I went north about 200 yards from our position and the same distance to the south, and with the Starlight Scope, I could see a good ways up and down the beach. No river mouth and nothing looked familiar. Tommy moved inland just a short distance to look the area over with his binoculars. Neither of us saw anything that indicated we were where we were supposed to be. So, and then like you said, you know you're in the wrong space, but you might as well do a reconnaissance while you're there, and that's kind of the decision that's made. And I was thinking about this too. So I was thinking you guys only have 5 guys, and the idea behind that must have been, hey, let's travel light and we can maneuver really quick. And then I got to this list of what you were carrying. Here's what Mike was carrying. Mike talking. I was the mule. On a recon patrol, I carried a Car-15, carbine, and just over 800 rounds of 5.56 ammunition, along with an assortment of a dozen fragmentation, CS, and smoke grenades. I also had 3 law rockets and a Starlight Scope. All of us carried a medical kit and inflatable UDT over-the-head life vest. I also had our silenced weapon, a .22 caliber automatic pistol with a suppressor attached to the barrel. We called it a hush puppy. So, not exactly light for reconnaissance and movement. I was thinking you guys would try and stay all slick, but that's no joke what you were carrying. Now, as you're patrolling, you start seeing fires, and eventually you see movement, you see bunkers, and Tommy says, I think it's about time we get the heck out of here. You say, Roger that, sir. It's about 0300. You got about 3 hours of darkness left, and you get into a stream.
Correct.
And start moving towards the beach.
Well, for three different reasons. One, it keeps you a low silhouette. We knew that we were within a battalion of NVA at that period of time. Then we saw tanks and gun emplacements, so we knew that we were way north of where we were supposed to be. So by getting in the stream, the tide range is 18 feet over there, so the current was running out, so we knew it was going out to the ocean. So we got in there. By keeping our low silhouette in there, we could move a lot faster in the water, and we didn't. Hopefully, we wouldn't bump into any of the enemy out there, which were starting to move around at that time in the morning. So,
now you start hearing something.
Correct.
And you halt the patrol. And you see what you see is NVA soldiers, a bunch of them. It's like an encampment
Correct.
of NVA soldiers, and and correct me if I'm wrong, but from their position and where you had moved to in the stream, now you're looking at them, and as you move to the water, you're going to be exposed. Is that the situation?
Well, actually, they were in a base camp type deal, and it was a quick reaction force, and we knew the main force was behind us. Of course, that exposed us, kind of cut off our southern route. So to the north of us, which we knew we were going farther north, there was that big lagoon, as the maps show. And so we would have, to our eastern flank, we had the ocean. To the western flank, we had the lagoon. And then to the south, we had the bad guys that we knew of. And to the north, we had some sand dunes. But we could see, after you pass this one big bunker, you could see nothing but flat beach. So we figured that'd be our best objective to move up there. And Tommy got on top of this. We thought it was a big sand dune, but actually it was a bunker built, and it actually had tunnels down inside of it. So.
And that's the one that you did a recon and you found that bunker?
Yeah, found the bunker.
And then you brought Tommy there?
Tommy went up there with the radioman, which was Dang, and that gave us, of course, back then, the radios for PRC 77's line of sight, which so.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's trying to make comms back to Woody and or back to the ship if anything's needed.
The ship was in Newport and using the USS Morgan. That's what the ships were. Then we finally got Woody, but Woody was down off the mouth of the Quaviette. He thought, after he got their bearings, so they were a long ways off from where we were.
So, at this point, Quan, you guys are in that bunker, and Quan comes running back, and he says, "Daiwei Norris, with the starlight scope, I see two men coming down the beach. They're quite a way off, but they're heading our way."
Mm-hmm.
So. Then you seem like you come up with a plan right there of what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Which to me, I'm like thinking, well, I'll let you brief what your plan was. But you see two bad guys coming down the beach, and your idea is, cool, it's time to do our body snatch.
That's correct. And I figured the officer, which name is unmentioned, he was a good size. He's like 5'9". He was in strong. I mean, athletic guy.
Right.
And
so this is the other Vietnamese or the Vietnamese officer.
That Quan,
he's a big guy.
Yeah. So I put him down on the beach because the high water line, and these guys were walking up and down the high water line, and the other guy was about 150, 100 yards ahead of the guy, because the other guy was walking up in the sand dunes, and I figured, we got to make sure we knock him out. Let the other guys just walking by, because he's just tootling down the coastline, looking around. And so I said, I sent Quan down with the hush puppy, not Quan, but the officer. And I sent him down, and I said, this guy's going to walk by us, but when the other guy, I'll take him out. And then I had Quan there with me, and Quan, after I knocked him out cold, and when Quan got him, he taped him up and secured him.
So the two enemy are walking down the beach at a pretty good distance apart.
Correct.
And you say, okay, me and Quan will go get this guy. we'll capture him,
Right.
and then lieutenant or this Vietnamese lieutenant, you go and get this other guy.
Correct.
And you said kill him, right?
No, I said that if you could take him down.
Okay, got it.
But he's right on the shoreline, so the waves are breaking. That's making a lot of turbulence and noise. And then the other guy's up in the sand dunes. He's at the high water line, walking around looking like that.
Got it.
I knew he would be the last one there, but we had to make sure we took him out for sure.
Right.
And then I told the officer he could go up and take this guy out, or eliminate him, or just make sure he didn't go back to the village, because the village is on down the beach.
Right.
And he stood up and yelled, "Lai Day Ma Lin" in Vietnamese. That means stop, come here. He's got an AK-47. The bad guy does. He's got a 22 long hush puppy, which is about from here across this room. And, he's out there like that. And then the guy opened fired on him. He's running back towards Tommy and me, and I'm running past him because I know he's on his way to the village. And as I say in the book, they didn't have radios like everybody did. So what sometimes they would send information, they'd shoot so many rounds in the sky and somebody'd answer back, but they changed all the time. But at that period of time, he only shot off 2 rounds. So hopefully that didn't mean something bad or good. And we got to the opening of the. He went across the creek, the creek bed, and he was heading straight to the entrance to the village. And I dropped down to one knee, hit 2 shots, hit him in the back. He fell down, and the next thing, all hell. Those 50 to 75 bad guys were chasing us down, and I was heading back to Tommy. And we got back, and I moved out on the point, as the book explains. So I'll let it go from there.
So when you grab, or now you're heading back to Tommy, and that's in that big sort of bunker dune thing.
Yeah.
And so now all you are co-located in the big bunker.
No, actually, I'm out on the very point.
Okay.
And Tommy was up on top of the bunker with Dang, and they had taken the guy we did capture up there, and he was up there. So I moved the officer to rear security and told him if he sees anything, let Tommy go. And I put Quan over on my eastern flank, which is the side of the ocean. So I was about 50 feet ahead of him, 50 yards ahead of him. So I could cover, I could see everybody coming in. So I was kind of like the point. But I kept Quan over on the ocean side. If they tried to flank me, he would knock them off. Then I could see them. Lagoon over here, I could see the lagoon, and so I could see everything out in front of me.
And now the enemy starts coming for you.
Coming for us,
and you start, engaging them, taking them down.
Yeah, I'd engage them, and what I'd do, I'd come up over here, I'd roll over and come up somewhere else. I'd throw a grenade over here. I'd move back, throw another grenade. I'd move forward up where the grenade hit, because by that time, and I gave them a false pretenses how many people we had. They didn't know if we had 12 or 15 or all they did. And Tommy and them were shooting from up there, but Tommy was on the radio trying to get communications.
And what Tommy was trying to get communications from, and just to kind of lay this out a little bit, the ships had been told, hey, we might need fire support.
Correct.
Well, whenever you set up fire support for yourself, you always set up what we call pre-designated firing positions. So, hey, you name them whatever you're going to name them, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. You give them girls' names, whatever, car names. But
Alpha, Bravo, Charlie.
Yeah, it's real easy to jump on the radio and say, hey, fire at position Bravo now. And the whatever fire support can start hitting that.
That's great if you're where you're supposed to be.
and that's the issue. So Tommy starts doing his best and saying, hey, fire rounds at this pre-designated spot. Right. They fire rounds at that pre-designated spot. Guess what? Couldn't even see it.
So they started moving north at that period of time, and they were shooting smoke in the air. And the firefight went for almost 3 hours, actually 2 hours and 55 minutes. And we had eliminated a lot of these guys, and they started falling back. And
so there's 5 of you that are making like 30, 40, 50 guys fall back.
Well, just 4 of us, because
got it.
The other guy never shot a round out of his weapon.
And that's just, you're taking good fire discipline.
Correct. 1 or 2 rounds at a time, making good hits, making sure. what I'd do, I'd shoot in the sand about an inch, and I'd see their heads come up. Then I'd shoot about an inch below the sand, and I'd get a headshot every time, so you could tell that. And then you'd roll over. Then with the grenades, you were knowing that we were getting, as you mentioned, what a grenade. Of course, we have a 4-second delay in ours, and their grenades that we had pulled those things before, and they would go anywhere from 14 seconds to 28 seconds.
They don't have good quality control in their grenade factories like we do. Let's see. Yeah, you're talking about that. You're sending guys off. Now, you continue to shoot. You're continuing to hold your position. You're about halfway through your ammo at this point. And then, speaking of these grenades, you're in one of these positions, and boom, in comes one of those grenades to your spot. What'd you do about that?
Well, I yelled grenade, and I grabbed it and threw it back. I was going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. About the time I hit 8,000, the damn grenade came back over, and I'm going 12,000, 13,000, because, of course, we do it in thousands, and that gives you a good second. And I threw it back, and the grenade went back and forth 5 times, and I was at 21,000, 22,000. I said, this thing's got to go off, and it went off, and I was hit 6 times in my back with shrapnel. And I just yelled out. I didn't say nothing else. And when I yelled out, I just stayed there, and I looked up, and there was 4 guys coming across, and I eliminated all 4 of those guys. And that's when we found out they started falling back. And Tommy said, they're falling back. And I said, that's it. He said, are you okay? I said, I'm wounded, but I'm okay. I'm still very, very mobile. And, of course, the adrenaline's pumping like God knows what. And you don't worry about yourself. You just you need to get out of there. That's all we knew.
Now, at this point, it seems like they're falling back a little bit, and it looks like from the way it's described, there's basically another dune that's a little further back from where you are.
Approximately 500 yards.
And that's to the north?
To the north. It's going
right.
by itself. I mean, everything else is flat except for that one dune.
And so what you guys hatched the plan real quick. All right, let's get to that thing. It's further away. Let's create some distance, and then from there we can eventually get in the water and get out of here. And I talk about cover and move all the time, and that's like the fundamental principle of how we fight. And in a normal situation, you would just get little terrain features and you'd move back a little piece at a time because that's how you support each other. In this one, there was nowhere to hide in between those two.
No.
So you guys made the call of Tommy and who's going to stay up there?
Tommy and Dang the Ray would stay up there, and Tommy said, you fall back. Because at that period of time, I was the only one that had been wounded. But what we did, I looked across, I had a pair of binoculars. I looked across, and I said, I couldn't understand why, because I counted almost 100 guys, and Tommy said there's a lot more than that. And it was a NVA battalion. They were trying to encircle us. And by the time I got back, as the book says, Dane comes back by himself because Tommy had been shot in the head at that period of time.
So you guys, they put down cover fire for you.
Correct.
And then you fall back. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And you got the Vietnamese lieutenant and you got Quan with you.
Quan with me.
You get back to that position, and that means Lieutenant Norris is still up in the big bunker getting ready. He's waiting for your fire support. And while that's happening, I'm going to go to the book right here. I was asking for naval gunfire right onto our position.
Correct.
And he says those rounds could have hit Deng and me just as well as the bad guys, but I had no choice. The guy on the radio came back and said, understand fire for effect. And I said, absolutely, put it on us. And he said, are you sure? And I said, just get it in here. And so they had actually, as they were calling in this naval gunfire, Tommy was like seeing guys coming, and like through the grace of God, one big round hit there. It hit them and got a lot of bad guys. And then, again, going back to the book, I went back to getting the Law ready to fire. That's a Law rocket. I could hear the ship shooting, but that's the last thing I remember. And then the narrator comes in and says, at that point in the fight, Tom Norris took an AK-47 round to the left side of his forehead. The bullet entered his skull at the orbital socket of his left eye, tore at a section of his skull, exposing his brain, and cut a shallow furrow along the brain itself. Dang saw his officer go down and the extent of his head wound. His lieutenant had been shot dead. Knowing there was nothing he could do, he made for the others, who had just taken a position on the next dune to the north. As he ran, he took a round through the radio he still carried on his back, knocking him down. The round destroyed the radio and saved his life, but fragments carried through into his back. Dang picked himself up and kept running. It took him close to 10 minutes to reach Mike. "Where's Tommy?" Mike asked Dang when he reached him. "Where is Dai Wei?" "Dai Wei is dead," Dang replied. And this is it. So, your trusted Vietnamese fellow SEAL says, "Hey, look, the lieutenant, that's Dai Wei, is lieutenant, he's dead. And this is what you do." I'm going to the book here. "I told Quan and the others to wait here, that I was going back for Tommy. They tried to stop me, saying it was no use, he was dead. I believed them. I too thought he was dead, but I wasn't going to leave him behind. We never leave anybody behind. So no way was I going to be the first to do that. Had I been wounded or dead, he'd have come back for me. That's who we are." Dang said he was dead, and I had no reason not to believe him. It didn't matter. And what if, by chance, he was still alive? I could not have lived with myself if I had left him behind, not knowing, or what the NVA might do to him if he were still alive. That whole area south of the bunker was littered with bodies, and they would be looking for revenge. I had close to a quarter of a mile to cover, and the last part was uphill, but I ran all the way. The initial salvo from the Morton, that was the ship out at sea, although I didn't know it at the time, that it was the Morton shooting, had made the bad guys think twice about advancing on the dune with the bunker. When I got close, I saw them moving carefully toward the bunker. From where I could see, they were flanking the bunker and moving in from the east or the beach side as well as from the south. I saw Tommy lying on the west side of the bunker. Two guys were climbing over the top as they moved in from the east. They moved cautiously and got within a few feet of him. I shot them both and moved to where Tommy was. He had an unbelievable head wound. The whole side of his forehead was gone. His brain was visible. You could actually see it. The front lobe of his brain was kind of pushing out through his skull. I could see why Dang said he was dead. I sure thought he was. I picked him up, put him over my shoulder, and started running. I also grabbed his AK-47 as I knew I was getting low on ammo. I hadn't taken more than 10 steps from the bunker when there was this explosion behind me from naval gunfire round. The concussion picked us both up in the air, lifting Tommy off my shoulder and tossed us forward 10 or 15 feet. I literally saw him leave my shoulder, and fly through the air. When I landed, I sat there for a moment stunned, trying to orient myself and catch my breath. Once I sorted myself out, I crawled over to where Tommy was lying in the sand. Once I got to Tommy again and started to pick him up, he spoke to me for the first time. He said, "Mike, buddy." And that was when I knew he was alive. I said, "Can you run?" And he says, "I can run, but I can't see." But he really couldn't run. Then he blanked out again. I put him in a fireman's carry and took off for the dune to the north where I had left the others. I heard him talking now and then, and I guessed he was fading in and out. But I knew he was alive. And I put all my energy and focus to covering the ground between where we were and the other dune.
Well, like I said, you and I have talked about the camaraderie and the respect we have for each other. And even though Tommy's a much smaller than I am, he would have done the same thing for me, and I know that. So it's like you say, if you die, which we understand what our job is as being Navy SEALs, but I could have never lived with myself knowing that if he was dead. And I thought he was dead, but with the grace of God, he's still with us. So I was running back with him, I got shot through my left calf, and through my left calf, and I fell to the ground. And we got back, and there was Quan and Dane giving us cover fire.
Were you like, when I've done stuff that was maybe not the safest things in the world, mm-hmm. I never was really thinking like, oh, this is dangerous. Were you thinking, oh, this is really dangerous? Or were you just, oh, he's over there and I got to go get him? Because that's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do. So that's what it is. You don't, fear is a good thing, but you got to focus. I mean, if, I could have sat down and said, hey, we're all going to die. I'm just going to lie here and do it. But I said, I'm going to take as many of those SOBs down as I can. And, and the thing is that it's like we go back to what we are and the camaraderie and going through training and why we do things and things like that. And I think that the brought up was my father. As I go back to, I look about it, because my dad never would have left me behind or anybody else behind, and that's what's instilled in us as we go through training, and that's what's instilled us, I know Tom Boyhan was saying last night, he said, I don't think you ever knew what fear was. Well, I knew what it was, but I mean, being afraid, if you worry about being afraid of everything, you should never be in the field, because you're not focused on what you're trying to do. So that's the whole thing is, so we're out there to do a job, so let's get the damn job done.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think guys would feel more afraid when we were getting ready to go in the field. When even me, when you have time to think, like, oh, we're going down this street, which has had 17 IEDs on it in the last 4 days, and there's guaranteed to be another one on there tonight. Well, the question is it going to hit you or is it going to hit someone else? And I would see the look on guys' faces while we were getting ready to go out, and you could see a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. But once you're in the field, everyone's doing what they do. They're just doing their job.
And it's like flicking the switch, light switch. You get your mind into what you're supposed to be doing. So if a guy doesn't have his mind in the game, he's going to stay at home. He ain't going out in the field with Mike Thornton, I promise you that.
Now, this is one of my favorite parts of the book. That is, well, I'll read it. This is you talking. When I got back to the dune, Dang and Quan were waiting for me, providing cover fire. Lieutenant Tuan was nowhere in sight. He'd already made it for the water to escape. But God bless Dang and Quan. They waited for me and were still in the fight, even though Dang was wounded. They said, Mike, what do we do now? And I said, we swim. Which is the classic SEAL scenario, in that the water is our salvation. It's like we have that special experience in the water, and people aren't comfortable in the water, and it's our home. And that was just the classic answer. These guys are saying, what do we do now?
Remember, we're combat swimmers, not combat runners, but the running does help.
So now talk about when you're moving to the water. You're carrying Tommy. What goes on then?
Well, I didn't inflate Tommy's life jacket, as some of the stories said. I was using Tommy like a surfboard, and every time a wave would break, I'd push him underneath the water and bring him up the other side, because the worst thing you could do is have a wave. And we had 6 sets of waves coming in, and that's how Quan ended up getting injured. He got shot. And so after I got Tommy out, that's when I and I could never find Tommy's life jacket. And he had it in a pocket down on his calf. And I said, why? He said, well, I wonder if I get a bullet hole in it. I said, it's good because we can put a piece of tape in, and if you have a sucking chest wound, I can take. So I took my life jacket off me, put it on his head, and I took the old UDT. I took the harness, but I just put a little bit of air, and I started breaststroking out to sea, and that's when I saw Quan was not going anywhere, and I could see Dang out in front of me, and so I swam over and grabbed Quan, and I put Quan in front of me.
And Quan had been shot too.
He had been shot
pretty bad in
the back femur, and also his buttocks was completely kind of gone, so he couldn't. So I.
So you're wounded. You got shrapnel in your back. You got shot in the leg. You got Lieutenant Norris, who's basically unconscious, dying.
Yeah.
And now you got Quan, who he can't move himself. He's immobile as well.
Correct.
And Dang is leading point as you guys are paddling out,
Yeah.
and you're carrying both these other guys through the water.
So what I did, I took Quan and put his arms. I put my arms underneath Quan's arms, and he held Tommy like this, and I started breaststroking until we got out past the range of their weapons. And at that period of time, I inflated Quan's life jacket with a little bit. Then I actually tied his life jacket to my waist, and I towed Quan and swam with Tommy on my back.
Here's, again, a typical, I think this exemplifies the SEAL attitude right here. This is you talking. Every time Tommy woke up, it was, Mike, you got everyone? I could only count 4 of us. Where's the other guy? I'd say, I got them. I got everyone. And then he'd drift off again. Then when he woke up again, it was, Mike, you got everyone? Do you have all of them? And I'd say, damn it, Tommy, I got them all, okay? They're accounted for. But I just love the fact that, you got a guy that's clearly close to death, and when he does become conscious, his number one concern is, does he have his guys with him?
His troops. That's it. And that's the way great leadership is. Sometimes people surpass that because but it goes back to the thing that you and I were talking about earlier. You take care of your people will take care of you.
Now, you get out, past, like you said, past the small arms fire, and again, Dang and Quan keep asking, Mike, what do we do? What do we do? And each time you said, we swim. We just keep swimming. We'll swim south all the way to Tuinon if we have to.
That's correct.
And that's what you did. You kept swimming and kept swimming and kept swimming, and you're out there for 3 hours swimming. And just to put that into some perspective for people that have never swam in the open ocean before, the longest swim that you do in SEAL training is 5.5 nautical miles, which is 6.2 statute regular land miles. And that takes, depending on the current, depending on how good of your swimmer you are, that's the longest swim that they actually make you do. And that takes like 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours. That's the longest swim that they make you do. And by the way, they give you a little water break in between. So here you are swimming this, and you're wounded, shot in the leg. Like I said, you're dragging these other guys. Now, luckily, Bill Woodruff, and we talked about this earlier,
Unbelievable. He saved our life. I mean, Billy wouldn't give up on us. He would not give up. He kept looking for us, and actually the Morgan thought they had killed us all. They thought, and they never knew until several years ago that we were still alive.
No, that's actually a great, and again, obviously, I can't cover the whole book on this show, but get the book, because there's Dick Couch did a great job of actually going out and talking to the people that were firing, talking to people on the Morgan. And you're right, they fired rounds, and all of a sudden they didn't hear anything, and they fired danger close rounds, meaning like rounds that we know are going to be very close to our friendly forces, and then they never heard another word. So their thought was, horrible. We must have hit our own guys. And but luckily, and the other thing that's interesting about Bill Woody Woodruff is the other lieutenant,
Correct.
The Vietnamese lieutenant, had actually gotten out to them and told them, hey, this is what happened. The lieutenant got killed. Mike went to go get him and never came back. That's what he got told.
So the word got back to Woody, and he called the Newport News, and they went out with the navy blue that Tommy was dead and I was missing in action, and they were still looking for Quan and Dang. So,
okay. So here we hear in the book, and again, Dick Couch did a great job getting back with all the guys that were there, or at least a lot of them, and he's talking to Woody here, Bill Woodruff. He says, it was about 11:30, and I saw the Newport News begin to move off to the south. Then my junk skipper got a call from the other junk that was off to the north and slightly inshore from us. We were about a half a mile apart so as to better search the area. They said they had swimmers in the water and were going to get them. You can't know what that meant. So there it is, because Bill stuck around.
Yeah, and I have the greatest admiration and respect for Bill. I'm glad that Bill found us, because Bill was going to do a counterattack, and then we had Ryan McCumbee down in Tuinon getting a bunch of guys, everybody else that was left, to come and find us. So that goes back to the things about taking care of your teammates, and thank God they did find us, because none of those guys would have made it, because they had over 600 bad guys up there. So they, sometimes you don't want to leave nobody behind, but sometimes you got to take your losses too.
It was the two things, and I've heard this from other SEALs from Vietnam. Two missions, there's no question we're launching on, is down pilot and SEALs in trouble. We're going.
Yep.
And that's what those guys that were still in Tuinon were doing. They were getting ready to go.
They were coming after us, and I hate to say it, but I figured we'd have lost everybody trying to get in to get us at times. Because, like I said, they had the gun emplacements, they had tanks in there. We weren't the heavy-duty guys. But that goes back to even what we have today with, like Eric Christensen trying to go in and losing the guys that, we're going to go in and get our boys back out. And, we passed the baton on back from where I am, and these young men who serve us now, I have the greatest admiration. They're a lot smarter than I am, because they, you got these kids going through training now. They're all got college educations, but they're enlisted guys. They just want to be in the teams.
And the training they do is awesome.
Oh yes,
way better than I had it when I went through. They have very high standards. Great guys coming through. So you guys now get back on board, but obviously this isn't over yet, because you got severely wounded. I mean, especially Tommy Norris, and you actually told him bring the Newport News back, because there's a
correct. There's a doctor. I knew there was a doctor on board, because it was a Navy cruiser, and they had a lieutenant commander on board. And I called Woody and I said, we have 4 WIA and 1 critical, and they Newport News did turn around, and we started steaming, and our junk. Woody was on the other junk. Our junk got there first, and we passed down a boatswain chair. Then we passed down a rigger. Then we put Tommy inside that and got him up there. And I actually picked Tommy up out of it and carried him down, because the thing was too wide to get through the hatch. So I picked Tommy back up and carried him down and laid him on the gurney in the doctor's office. And then I got called to the bridge to debrief the admiral of what went on.
This is again a great find by Dick Couch, another SEAL that wrote the book, another Vietnam SEAL, and he found a guy named Chuck Zender, and Chuck Zender was a corpsman on the USS Newport News. And I'm not sure why Dick Couch found him or how that worked, but he's the guy that he found, and he's talking about when you guys came on board. And what was interesting was that a few months before, actually a month earlier, they'd had a turret explosion on the USS Newport News, and it killed 11 and wounded 62. Mm-hmm. And so the medical staff on that they were kind of primed. Luckily, they had just been through basically a horrible mass casualty drill, and they were somewhat ready for it, which, again, by the grace of God, they had some recent experience with dealing with wounded. And so that's why they were ready for this, and that's according to Chuck Zender, this corpsman. And here's Chuck Zender talking. When they came aboard, they were a pretty scruffy lot. My job in handling casualties was triage. I saw them first, evaluated them, and sent them on to a senior medical person, corpsman, or doctor for treatment. I remember seeing this one American. I couldn't believe his head wound. His forehead was simply blown away. I had two thoughts. One, it was a good thing he was in salt water or he'd have bled to death. My second thought was, this man will not be alive in the morning. He went straight to Dr. Fulciro, who was waiting for him in surgery. There was this big guy who was with him, and he carried him from the fantail to the sick bay. We had to force him to let go so we could treat him. He wanted to go into surgery with him. So that was you.
That was me.
Obviously. And he also said that when they came out and said, hey, we need to check you out, and you looked and you said, no, the Tommy comes first. The rest of us can wait. This is Chuck Zender talking again. While we were treating the Vietnamese SEALs, I kept my eye on the big American. I finally got him to sit down so we could look him over. I saw blood on his pant leg, and I cut into his trouser. I saw a bullet hole in his leg. My eyes got big, and I called another corpsman over to look at it. I said, we better treat that. And the SEAL said something like, yeah, whatever. He just didn't seem to care. But he did care about the others and kept asking about them, especially his lieutenant. We knew he was a lieutenant because the other big American SEAL said he was. He had no rank insignia on him. So, again, your number one priority is your teammates.
Correct.
Another person, so you guys make it back. The ship gets you back to land. Tommy eventually gets casualty evacuation to the Philippines.
Yeah, I got on the radio, and Ryan McCumbee, and we medevac Tommy off by helicopter to Da Nang, and Ryan flew down on a helicopter, and he was waiting in Da Nang, and Ryan stayed with Tommy. Then they sent a 141 because we knew we were going to get our POWs, Admiral Stockdale, Bud Day, people like that, out, and so all the top doctors, neurosurgeons, all those guys were over there because they had already pulled everybody out of Vietnam with the exception of just general practitioners. And by the time we got Tommy through the whole operation and got him to the Philippines, to Clark's, it was almost 19 hours long, the medevac. Then his operation lasted 19 and a half hours, his first operation. And they stayed in touch with us. But I stayed on board the Newport News till the following day to take care of the Vietnamese. Spoke English, but I spoke pretty. I mean, I was fluent in Vietnamese, and so I stayed on there until we got them all patched up.
This is the doctor talking, Major Walter Grand. He's the neurosurgeon that they had to get this guy get Tommy Norris to in the Philippines.
Correct.
And he says, when he arrived, we took him directly into the OR. At the time, general military battlefield protocol held that the patient needed to be or should be conscious going into surgery. And I was surprised that someone with this serious of a head wound would be conscious and conversant. Fortunately, he was. He was still dressed in his operational gear, which were blue jeans and a black T-shirt of some kind. As I was conducting my initial examination, I remember that he was conscious, but just barely. I could tell he'd been through a lot. Then he seemed to come more alert and ask, "Sir, can you tell me about my men? I know we got them all off the beach, but can you tell me if they're okay?"
To the end.
Yeah. It's the teams. Now, they get done with the surgery that you're talking about, incredibly long surgery, and here's the doctor talking again. On removing the bandage and inspecting the wound, we talked, and I sensed that he didn't know that he no longer had a left eye. I was reluctant to tell him, as he had endured a great deal, but he was a pretty tough fellow, so I told him that we were unable to save his left eye. He thought about it for a second and then said, "Do you think they'll kick me out of the Navy because of that?" I said that I couldn't really answer that, but I took it as a good sign that he still wanted to be a SEAL.
And the funny part, it wasn't the eye as much as it was the loss of the front lobal part of his brain. That was...
I actually don't think that's funny, sir.
I don't think it is either.
So when you say that, what do you mean? That what was the... you're saying, hey, they're not going to kick you out of it even though you've lost part of your brain?
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the... we talked about it because he wanted to stay in. He was already... chosen to be a lieutenant commander at that period of time, and of course, you on medical hold, that goes to stop. And but Tommy would have been a great admiral. I mean, he really would have done us proud, as of Ryan McCumbee too, and a few other guys that didn't go up through the ranks of to the top. But we've had some great leadership up there, and Eric Olson, Bill McCraven. Joe Kernan, McGuire, Burt Callan. I mean, the way you look at, I watched the teams grow from this. 04 was as high as you could go and still be in the teams, and now I look at the thing, and the guys they just amaze me every time I look and read something or something. How much I'm so proud of each one of these young men and who serve this great nation of ours.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, that the attitude is just constant. And, I had this with my guys that got wounded. None of them wanted to go home. They wanted to just stay.
Yeah.
They didn't care if they just had to sit and stay and watch. They wanted to stay with us in Iraq.
Well, I mean, how proud all you guys were when we were there with Admiral Olson and you guys were receiving your awards in the Pentagon, after Mikey Mansour. And you look at the guys and Job and those guys that, of course, he lost his life in a very basic operation. And but even though when they had the diversity against them, they continued to strive to make their life better.
Well, Ryan Job's the classic example. When he was blind in both eyes, he was telling me he was already back in America, and he's on the phone telling me, "Can I please come back to Iraq? I want to be with the platoon."
Yeah, yeah. And he goes in, gets his college education, and has a beautiful family. And I remember there when I was able to put the Purple Heart on him. And Tommy and I were there with Admiral Olson, of course.
Was that at Bethesda? Where was that? Was that in the hospital?
No. He was at the Pentagon.
Oh, okay.
Remember
at the award ceremony,
the
big
award
award ceremony.
that we had for you guys, the big ones, and then we went down and he gave other from the Team 3. We gave Colin Green was there. Admiral Green was there.
It was awesome. It was the Task Unit Bruiser award ceremony at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
We were all pretty surprised to be there doing that.
Yeah.
But Ryan Job, so you guys put the Purple Heart on him there.
Yeah.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, he's had the same attitude that you hear from Tommy Norris. Hey, can I stay in?
Can I be there? Be with the guys.
How much longer were you in Vietnam after that operation?
That was October 31st, and I came home on a break in November, and then I came home for good in January. So then everybody left in March of '73. And Woody and the rest of the guys, they stayed there, and they came back as the final thing. Brooksy and Woody and Chamberlain and Harry Cool and all those guys, Bill Bradford and stuff. So, that was the last sales. Of course, then we got involved with Delta Platoon, with the Cambodia issue and all that kind of stuff, and the Philippines and stuff like that.
You talk about coming home here. I'm going to the book. Coming back to the team this time was different from my first Vietnam tour when you were labeled a one-tour wonder. which is, by the way, still what you get called in this day and age when you come home from your first deployment, or even from my Thailand tour. At SEAL Team 1, you were not a made man until after your second combat rotation. It was not so much respect from the team veterans, as many of them had been on 4 or 5 combat rotations. It had more to do with acceptance. I was now one of them. When guys like Gary Gallagher and Walt Gustavell and Doc Sell came up to you and said, "Nice job over there," or "Good work getting your lieutenant back off that beach," it really meant something. There was also getting to know my kid, who thought I was some stranger, which I was, and getting reacquainted with my wife. I'd been gone more than I was at home since we were married, and there was the absence of combat. Both the worrying of having to go in the field and, in some ways, missing the anticipation of getting ready to go on an operation and the rush that comes from combat. I looked at all this as normal for any SEAL coming home, but it was still an adjustment. So you guys, same stuff that guys go through now.
Yeah, correct.
Same exact stuff guys go through now.
And our spouses don't get enough credit for what they do. I mean, they raise our kids, families, they take on, stuff that we should be there to try to help them with. But, we have amazing spouses, in the teams too. And we have a lot better, the first thing I mentioned, my wife, they said, did the Navy issue her? No, they don't. Now we have a whole different outlook, thank God. And, they are part of our lives, and they should make it better for all of us.
The military, all the military wives.
Oh, yeah, each and every one of them.
What they do, they're raising the kids, but they're also fixing water heaters and, repairing plumbing, and they're just doing everything in the house. Like you said, stuff that we're supposed to be doing if we're home.
If we're home, so they have to put up with all the BS with a man taking a car in there trying to, hell, I know how to change oil, they say, don't try to pull that one over my eyes. So.
Now, going back to the book, this is you talking. I was notified in September that I would receive the Medal of Honor. A lot goes through your mind when something like that is going to happen to you. You try and play it down in your mind like it's no big deal, but it really is a big deal. Everyone in uniform knows it's a big deal. I felt humbled and undeserving. And I swore that I was not going to change me.
Well, Mike Thornton's always been a renegade and probably always will be a renegade, and I wasn't going to let it change me. And when I went back to get the medal, they wouldn't let Tommy out of the hospital, so I kidnapped him and kept him for 4 days.
So Tommy was still recovering from the head wound.
Yeah, he was still going.
And this is what, a year later?
A year later.
And Tommy's still, he's just going through all these surgeries and everything else. Yeah.
Tommy went through surgeries for 6.5 years and still goes even now. So, it's unbelievable. It's
But they wouldn't let him out of the hospital to go to your ceremony.
No. So I said, hey, this is not, I said, I'll bring him back, and they said, no. I said, well, I'm going to get in trouble when I take him out. So I kept him for 4 days, put him in my hotel, and never filled his name. And everybody in the world's looking for it. And the Surgeon General of the Navy, which is a 3-star, put me on report. And I had to go to Admiral's Mass, but that's okay. It's not my first one.
Tony Fratty, who is the Charlie Platoon chief, we used to talk about Mike Thornton, and we'd say, just on random days, we'd say, hey, you know what Mike Thornton's doing today? Whatever Mike Thornton wants to do today. So you just smuggled him out of the hospital against orders, went to Admiral's Mast. You talk a little bit about the ceremony here. Going back to the book, we showed up at the White House for the ceremony. Then we were all taken to the Oval Office, and I was presented with the medal. I'll never forget President Nixon saying, "Mike, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, Mr. President, you could break this medal in half and give the other half to this young man," which was Tom Norris, you were pointing to, standing behind me, because he saved my life too. So again, even in the end there, you're looking out for your teammate.
Right.
All the way through.
So we still look out for each other even today after 46 years. So I mean, you never. It's a job that you never give up.
Well, the book, like I said, I mean, we've covered a fraction of the book, and it gives so much more detail. It goes on to talk about the rest of your Navy career. It goes on to talk about and obviously it talks about Tommy Norris's career
as the
FBI agent. By the way, went into the FBI and was an undercover operative. I mean, just
unbelievable.
Yep. You got to get this book so that you can get the full details of what I'm talking about. And, you know, the last thing I wanted to read from the book is the citation from your Medal of Honor.
Please don't. They can go online and read it. But the book's called By Honor Bound, ladies and gentlemen, and I tell you, I never felt I deserved the medal, never feel I would deserve the medal, but, you know, that I wear that with the honor of the men and women who served before me, served with me, and served after me. But a lot of people don't know we've lost 2,853,000 people. This great nation does enjoy our freedoms today. And that's who we can never forget. And freedom is not free. And we must honor each and every one of them. And they all deserve the medal. It's given their lives for this great nation. And, of course, Mikey Mansour, like I said before, what a great young man. I knew Mikey. And I feel for all our Gold Star families. And because I've never, knock on wood, I've never lost a child. But I've lost a lot of close, great friends, and I know what part of they're going through. But you know, until you lose a child of your own that God's blessed you to give, it's hard for people to understand. But freedom is not free; it's written in blood, as you know, Jocko.
Well, yeah, and. You know, I can't even fathom what it's like to lose a child. I know, you know, it's I can't even fathom. And you know, when I hear people throwing the word hero around, you know, I always say what I hear a lot of veterans say, and that is the real heroes didn't come home.
I agree with you. But at least we did get them home. And we still continue to try to get the remains of the ones home.
Well, you know, like I said, if you go and get this book, you can read it. You can learn a lot about these operations. You can learn a lot about people and what people are capable of and what real sacrifice looks like. And, you know, Mike, again, like everyone's going to want to tell you and tells you all the time, thank you for the service that you made for our country. But as a SEAL, I want to say thank you for setting the example that we followed. And as a person and as a human being, thank you for showing us that we're all capable of more than we thought. And no matter how dire the circumstances, no matter how many enemy forces are advancing, no matter how many rounds they're firing at you, how many grenades they throw at you, no matter how big the problems that you face in life, never quit on yourself and never quit on each other.
Very well put there, Jocko.
Sir, I think we've kept you here long enough.
Well, Echo, I'm sorry you didn't get a whole lot of speaking time there, buddy.
No, I was enjoying the listening. Believe
That's
me.
what Echo does.
Yeah.
He gets the lucky job. He just sit back and listen to awesome stories.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for coming on.
It's my honor. Thank you for what you're doing and getting the word out to the public. And because it's like I say, freedom is not free, ladies and gentlemen. Freedom is written in blood. And please don't take advantage of this. Give back to the ones that are giving so much. And that goes back to what you and I were talking about too. I mean, the wives, the children, the sacrifices they make for their spouses to go overseas and keep this nation free.
And what's the organization that you have now?
It's called the Michael E. Thornton Foundation. It's the Met Fund. We give out money, and I don't give out, $50,000 or $100,000. I give out $10,000 here and $5,000 there, and our Met Foundation basically, or I'll give out $20,000, and just a couple of examples. One was a young Marine, came back. He was a corporal. They retired him. But of course, now it takes anywhere from 19 months to 2 years to get into the VA. He had these bad headaches, but he didn't have enough money to pay for his co-payments. So I write a check to the MRI, to the hospital. I write the check. They do an MRI, found out he had a brain aneurysm, and was able to save the young man's life. Another one, we had a guy in special ops. He was an Air Force major, intel officer at JSOC. He was overseas. His wife got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We put her into Duke University. They tried to save her life. A friend of mine goes back to the day when we started SEAL Team 6 and started JSOC in 1980. He was our chaplain. He was a Catholic chaplain, and he calls me up and said, "Mike, I hear you got a great foundation. I have a problem." Well, I said, "What is your problem?" I do due diligence. We were able to get their kids back in this Christian school, which all the kids, they were ranged from the age of 7 to 10 or 11, I can't remember. And there's 3 of them, but they had spent their whole school time there. But the father causes the co-payments, which they had already built up to like $100,000 worth of co-payments. I paid for the kids' tuition, wrote a check, which was a little bit over $18,000, for all, put them back in there. But at least they had a stable platform, and everybody knew what was going on with the mother.
Yeah.
All the teachers knew the kids and stuff like that. And then at that period of time, I go back and I make some phone calls to some good friends of mine in New York City, and they took care of the $100,000 co-payments. So I put a Band-Aid on the problem, and then I try to go other. But I mean,
you call for fire support.
Yeah, fire. So yeah, but I mean, I work with the Navy SEAL Foundation, Navy SEAL Family Foundation. We work with keeping our history of the museum, which John Lee does a great job that we do up at Pebble Beach. The Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, which is the #1 foundation in the nation, to give over 99 cents of every dollar raised. And I give 97 cents of every dollar raised. I do have one administrator I pay for her so my wife and I can travel around and take care of that. But there's some great foundations out there. I just tell them, make sure you do your due diligence on their foundations. You just go online and check them out, and if they're a 4-star or 5-star, and find out. But all the foundations I work with, it's got to give at least 94 cents of every dollar raised out for the cause.
Where can they find your foundation?
Just pull up the Met Fund.
Okay.
Online is
MET.
Yeah,
Fund?
The Met Fund,
okay,
or the Michael E. Thornton. I put my name on it. The buck stops with me. If somebody's pointing fingers, they only got one finger to point. I'll take full responsibility of what I do. So as I always have, don't do. And I have people like Bob Kerry, Congressman. He used to be a Medal of Honors on my board. I have an admiral on my board. I have 2 really great businessmen on my board, and I have supports of people all over the United States, which help support their cause. They said they used to give money to other foundations, but they didn't like the way the money was being supported, so they give me like I say, make sure we take care. I mean, if it's like somebody blows up the engine, the engine having a bad month, they got laid off, and we pay for their rent, but we write the check to we don't give it to the person. We give it to the complex, or we give it to the hospital, or we give it to the doctor. So that way I know the money's going where it's supposed to be going, so they can get take care of their problems.
Well, obviously, your service isn't quite over yet. You're still serving and still helping veterans and SEALs across the board. And once again, sir, thank you for coming on. It's been an honor knowing you. It's been an honor talking to you. And I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Well, we will, Jocko. Just keep doing what you're doing, and Echo, keep them out of trouble.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. All right. We just took a technical break, and Mike Thornton has left the building and went to go do what Mike Thornton does.
Whatever you want.
Which is pretty much whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, obviously, having him on.
Agree.
And when Mike Thornton tells you, don't read my citation, you don't read the citation. Simple as that.
That was awesome.
No factor.
Yes.
No factor at all.
Yeah. Go online and read it.
But awesome having him on, obviously. And now we want to keep having people like Mike Thornton on the podcast.
Yes.
If somebody wanted to help us have people on this podcast,
sure.
Do you have any suggestions on how they could maybe lend to that effort? Echo Charles.
The support? Sure.
Oh, yeah. Like, basically, that's what I'm saying. A way to support you.
Yeah. Of course. Here's a way. And support yourself. That's kind of the thing, you know. What's good for the goose is good. You know what I'm saying.
Maybe.
Origin. We're in league with Origin, as you put it.
Yes, I do put it that way.
Sure, yeah. So, Origin, Maine. So, Origin, Maine, the state, just so to be clear.
Yes.
Origin, M-A-I-N-E.
Oh, you mean it like, you might be like Maine.
M-A-I-N.
Oh, okay, no.
You know,
it's
like
the
that's
state.
the main one, kind of, which makes sense, by the way.
Yeah.
Because it is the main one. Totally. And so, you know, a lot of times, like, okay, we'll take the geese. That's how I first heard of Origin, by the way. The geese. We're like, oh, these geese are dope. Check it, you know. And of course, you know, but that technically is kind of a matter of opinion as far as like, okay, I'm going to look at this geese.
Okay.
And be like, okay, no, I'm going to look at this one.
Because someone might like Ford more than Chevy
or
more
whatever.
than whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the look, especially with the geese, like, you know, the subtle differences kind of, you know, it's to each their own kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you're going into like full on fashion realm here,
Potentially.
which I don't go into.
Potentially, yeah.
I'm looking for functionality. You probably could have guessed that.
Yes. So, yeah, and you look into it. So the functionality part, yes, all that, of course. But when you say made in America, this is like the epitome. This is the basically the defining situation. So you know how they'll be like, hey, made in America, but then you know it's clothes or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll say in this case clothes, but then you say, oh, okay, hey, dang, those are good shirts. You know, where do you get your blanks from or whatever? Well, oh, we get them from, you know, somewhere other than America, kind of thing. No, the cotton. Get the cotton from America. That's what Origin did. That actual cotton.
Yeah. Well, when you do talk about functionality, just kind of FYI.
Yeah.
When you have a guy that's making the geese and therefore is going to weave the material to make the geese with, he's going to make material that is specifically the best to have for a gi.
Right.
That's the situation with Origin.
Yeah, man.
That type of commitment.
Yes.
That's why we're in league with Origin.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Because we have that mindset over on this side.
Makes sense.
Boy.
So yeah, Origin, that's the one. I'm looking forward to my gi. And I'm down for geese, by the way. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that one. Origin, Maine. ORIGINMAINE. Just to be clear, just in case. That's a good one.
It's not just geese.
Yeah.
You can get the hash guards.
The hash guard. Yeah.
And we're going to be making everything there.
Yeah.
We're going to be making everything there. Everything that I utilize in my life,
Yeah.
I'm going to make.
Dang. It's like so you're going to kind of come out with almost like a life kit is really what it is. It's a kit.
Oh, don't use the Reebok terminology, bro.
That's Reebok terminology?
Yeah, because the Reebok calls it like the UFC fight kit.
Okay.
But
I didn't know that.
Man.
No,
Don't
kit.
go
Like
there.
the word kit is a universal
No,
word.
the word kit is a universal word,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I do
yeah.
concur with.
Right.
But what did you call it?
The kit. That's what I called it.
I guess so.
So you
the
could call
Brits, the Brits call it kit. They call their op gear, like
Kit.
their web gear,
Yeah.
they call it kit.
Yeah.
Which means that we also, because we have interoperability with the Brits and with the Aussies,
Sure.
so we also tend to call our gear kit.
Right.
So yes, in fact, you are correct. If you were to say, I'm going to make all my kit there,
Right.
the answer is yes. But there's a fine line where people might think of the UFC fight kit, which didn't go over real well when they first came out.
Yeah. Hey, and you know we're gonna let that be their thing for sure. As far as it going well or not going well. This one, what would it be? Kind of like the unofficial discipline equals freedom kit.
How about we just call it gear?
Yeah, or we could just call it gear, I guess.
That's my vote.
All right. Cool.
I don't rule the world.
Well,
So if you
no.
want to call it kit on your side and I'll call it gear over here,
Yeah.
let's do that. You know, that way you're comfortable. I'm
Yeah.
all about everyone being comfortable with what they're saying.
Technically, it'll be a kit with gear in it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Because
well,
the kit
that's
is like the collective.
That's a traditional use of the word kit.
Right. That's what
Like,
I meant.
hey, okay, you got
like a survival kit.
yeah, I got a survival kit when I was 6 years old, and it's got a compass and a whistle and a pair of matches in it. What happens if you use both matches? You're in trouble. So that's a survival kit.
Bro, why do you have a whistle? You just said whistle,
Yeah,
by the way. Okay.
yeah.
All
Because
right.
you know when you're a little kid, you get lost in the woods. You're supposed to blow on the whistle for a while
No,
till
bro.
they find you.
No, sorry, Brett. Not on Kauai.
That
But,
didn't happen
hey,
in Kauai.
No, not that I know of.
What'd you do in Kauai when you got lost?
You just keep heading in one direction
And
and
you
it'll
hit the
bring you to the
ocean.
ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or up in the mountains.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, they call it Mauka and Makai. Mauka is mountain, Makai is ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the directions.
Yeah.
So otherwise, you just keep walking.
That's a good lesson for life, too.
Bro, we
keep
got
going.
lost in the mountains one time. Long story. Maybe some other time. Back to Origin.
Please, another time.
So boom. Origin, Maine. All made in America.
Yes.
Rash guards. Gis. All that stuff.
Yes.
This is like, yeah.
And by the way, supplements there, too.
Yeah.
Supplements.
Origin Labs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can find it all there.
Yeah, it's dope.
And we are going to make basically what we're talking about here, Jocko supplements. Because again,
Yeah.
what do I specifically want? I'm pretty particular. Let's
Right.
make that thing.
Yeah. And
And then we go forward.
the good part about that is you're kind of one of these guys you can rest assured you're not going to have like these weird extra things like, I don't know, hair dye or something like
We
that.
will not be selling hair dye.
Yeah, or something like this. So yeah, that'll be good. The good stuff for sure. OriginMaine.com.
Yes.
Also, support yourself. So on it, I'm not going to go into my kettlebell situation again this time. Actually,
Okay.
yesterday at work I didn't do kettlebells. I did.
I saw
back to
somebody
bar.
tweeted you it was like an article that said that those little goblet
Yes,
squats
goblet
were
squats.
not building.
Yeah, that was a funny article for sure.
I
I don't-
kind of laughed.
You know what the title was called? Something along the lines of, I'm trying to remember it exact. It was
Like
called
14 ways to avoid being big and
to
strong.
remain a puny little weakling.
Oh.
Actually, puny. I think no
Yeah.
dweeb. Dweeb.
Puny
The word
little
dweeb
dweeb.
was in there.
Yeah. those are
So
all-
apparently, given whatever number that was, I'm gonna remain a puny little dweeb. Apparently, here's the thing. Are those really goblet squats though? Because goblet squats.
Oh, no, I know what you do. You basically do a front squat,
Yeah.
double rack.
Double rack, yeah, because goblet is because this is the form,
Yeah,
the shape of a
goblet,
goblet right here,
yeah.
and that's how you hold it.
Yeah.
It is
true.
kind of, but what if you use like a huge ass kettlebell?
Well, then
Part
maybe,
of a Metcon.
yeah, that could work.
In fact, respect to the author of that, I forget who wrote it or whatever, but it was a real subjective, really,
Yeah. I
In
think it was
fact,
more of
to be
a
honest-
shock article kind of.
Yeah,
It was
it's like,
just
it was a
fun,
laugh.
man.
It was
Yeah,
for
it
a
was a
good
laugh
laugh,
one, yeah.
But if you take that
I don't think it was
seriously-
like a serious directive out there trying to help people that have skinny knees.
proud of that one?
Maybe.
You seem real proud of that one. Look at you. Anyway, I didn't really like the article on that level, but for a laugh, it was good.
And factually, here's the deal: kettlebells are legit,
Yeah.
and they are.
And goblet squats are
and
legit.
goblet squats are legit.
But here's the thing. There was a good point.
Hey, yeah, I'll tell you what. You know, we were talking about what you used to. You're good
Yeah,
at.
what you're used to. Yeah.
For some reason, I hurt like my wrist or something,
Yeah.
or I hurt something, and I couldn't do back squats or front squats.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I was maybe it was my shoulder. Anyways, I was doing goblet squats with the with my big kettlebell, which is 40 kilograms, and I had put on the schedule of what I was going to do, 25. It was a Metcon scenario. But the first number was 25. It was 25, 20, 15.
Oh, the reps. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the reps.
Gotcha.
25 hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was dang, because it's only 88 pounds, right? That should be pretty insignificant.
Yeah.
But you really do when you do those goblet squats.
Yeah.
You're using your whole body to keep that thing aligned.
It's good. Let me think. Yeah, I think I'm used to it now. I think that.
Yeah, and I got used to it in a pretty short period of time. That's what was cool.
Yeah.
So, onit.com, you can get that kind of stuff there.
If you want the cool ones. I think, and I don't know because, I haven't ventured out, and I don't think I ever will venture out to go see where I can get other kettlebells from. No need, really, because you can buy the regular ones or the dope ones. And let's face it, man, you take enough pictures of the dope ones for your Instagram or wherever you take pictures for, and you kind of can't go back. You can't. So keep that in mind. You
painted yourself into a kettlebell corner.
Exactly right.
And
anyway,
you and your social media have painted yourself into this corner.
Which is not a bad thing necessarily. Onit.com/Jocko, that's where you get these things.
I painted myself into a corner with my social media. I'm going to wake up every day at 4:30.
Yeah, you got to post it.
Guess what? The other day I got home at 3 o'clock in the morning, or I didn't get to sleep until like 1:30. Yeah. And when I woke up in the morning, I was really tired.
Yeah.
And I was, what am I going to do? I'm painted in the corner. I had to say, hey guys,
gotta do it.
I'm going back to sleep. And I actually went back to sleep. I told everyone.
Dang.
Yeah.
See, that's good though. You took accountability though.
Yeah, well, that's just lying, which I don't support.
Oh, if you didn't do that.
If I woke up, took a picture of my watch, which I've had people say, like, I bet you just wake up. Hey, do you ever sometimes just wake up in the morning, take a picture of your watch, and you go back to sleep? No, actually, I don't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you could ever bring yourself to do that. Well, like, why would you even want it? You wouldn't want to do that.
It's a horrible scenario.
It kind of defeats the purpose, really. Yeah. The whole purpose.
So, the other day, woke up, took a picture of my watch, and I was like, I got to go back to bed. I'm too freaking tired. So I went back to bed.
But you didn't post it.
No,
I you posted it, but you said, I'm going back to bed.
I'm going back to bed. I'm sorry. Hold the line for me.
Yeah, I dig your honesty.
Cover for me.
Actually, that one time we got home.
Cover and snooze. You guys cover and get after. I'm going to be over here snoozing.
Well, hey, that's the freedom part, though. What we always say, discipline. Yeah. You have the freedom to, hey, man, you got to sometimes. Yeah. You can't, like, especially if you're working out and you straight up don't get enough sleep. I'm not saying you don't. I don't. But that's not what I'm saying right now. But if you, the proverbial us, when we don't get enough recovery, which sleep is recovery, right? That's not a good thing, man. So every once in a while, you got to exercise that restraint in the form of the freedom to sleep in.
Yeah, well, I did.
Amen. That's part of life. Anyway, everyone. Also the whole painting yourself in the corner. Okay, so I got this jump rope, and it's like, I don't know how up to date you are on the new jump rope technology.
Yeah, I know they're getting better.
They're dope. And here's the thing: if you just buy a regular jump rope, like, you'll see the difference. And I mentioned that because I got an Onit jump rope. I told you about the time that my neighbor taught me how to do the crossover thing. And that's when it really hit me, like, this is a dope jump rope. So if you want to upgrade your jump rope, boom, Onit, that's the one. In fact, just go on there, see what up, see what they have. They have a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. Also, good way to support when we get this book, By Honor Bound. Tom Norris, Mike Thornton, and Dick Couch. When you get this book, go on our website, jockopodcast.com. There's a book section, top menu. Boom, click on there. Books from podcasts by episode, by the way. This is episode 89. Click through there. It'll take you to Amazon. You get your books there. Or even if you're going to do some other shopping, if you're going to buy a lawnmower, duct tape, whatever, click through there. Good way to support. Small little action, just one little click through. Big reaction by way of support. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all these podcasting providing platforms. and YouTube for the video version of this podcast and excerpts and some other various little video things. That's a good way to support. Also, Jocko has a store. It's called Jocko Store, jockostore.com. There are hats there. Good hats. Trucker hats, flex fit, 3 colors.
Wait, flex fit?
They're flex fit.
Wait, they don't have the little like thing in the back where
The snapback?
Yeah, the snapback.
No, I think they're flex fit.
They don't make trucker hats that are flex fit, I don't think.
They do now.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'm fairly positive.
Well, they're
flex
they're hats basically.
Yeah, and they're dope.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna bring me 9 of them.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
I didn't do that. That was
That's a bummer. Jocko has a store, but Jocko has no hats.
Yeah. There's you know what? There's this other kind of hat. I think it's called like an operator hat. It's like real simple. Anyway, I'm thinking about doing that one too.
Interesting.
In the event of you not being as into the trucker hat as maybe something else. We'll see. Flex fit as well. That's my thing. Is flex fit cool? Is that good?
Yeah, flex fit has purpose. I just have never seen a trucker's hat flex fit.
Yeah.
And I doubt I'm going to see one now.
No, man, it's the new stuff, apparently. But yeah, some other stuff on there. Some shirts on there. Cool stuff. Jocko even has a shirt that he designed, which is cool. Layers, if you will. Just go on
I
there.
like the way you promote the shirt that has your picture on it. You proud of that, aren't you?
No, I'm not actually,
You want
because
everyone
I
to
didn't
wear
want
that one, don't
No,
you?
I didn't want my picture on there.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I got to give you that. Echo did not want to have an Echo shirt.
Because it doesn't. To me,
I
it didn't make
demanded
sense. Yeah, vetoed it. It
Snuck
is called
around.
Jocko Store.
I got some pull
Yeah,
at Jocko
yeah.
store.
and I'm not saying to buy the shirt. I'm not saying to buy a hat. I'm saying go on the store, jockostore.com again. If you like something, get something. Good support. Also, Psychological Warfare. If you don't know what that is, it's an album with tracks, Jocko tracks. And these tracks help you get through moments of weakness in your campaign against weakness. Every once in a while, when you wage these hard campaigns against weakness, against your, waking up early, sticking to the diet, workout, all this stuff, sometimes you get moments of fatigue. Sometimes. Even the strongest have their moments of fatigue.
That's affirmative.
So this, Psychological Warfare, these tracks, they're like little spots for those moments of fatigue, get you through it. No problem. Psychologically. Then you act. Boom. So yeah, that's a good one. So if you're, waking up early, like I said, you're waking up early, you feel like hitting the snooze, listen to Psychological Warfare, one of those tracks on there. I think it's called Get Up and Get After It. You will not hit the snooze.
Good one.
Yep. That's it. Psychological Warfare, Jocko Willink. Anywhere, iTunes, where else? Amazon Music. All these places where they sell MP3s. It's a good one.
You can get them there.
Yep.
Yeah, this book that we covered today by Mike Thornton, by Tommy Norris, and by Dick Couch. You got to get this book. It's a great book. It's a great read, and that's a good place to start. So much more detail than I went over today.
Yeah.
When as I was walking out, Mike and his wife, and I was telling her that I was explaining to him that it's like the debrief I wanted since I was an E4 in the Navy.
Yeah.
That wanted to know what happened. Wanted the details.
Yeah.
Well, now we got them.
And those are some crazy details, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. He's talking about how, my friend gets his forehead blown off or whatever. You can see his brain, all this stuff. Even in a movie, that'd be a pretty graphic scene.
Even in a movie, that'd be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right? Like you'd be like, oh, well, that movie wasn't really realistic because the guy had his head blown off and then he lived.
But that was a crazy part, though, right? On that movie.
Yeah.
You
but
know?
no, it really
but
happened.
yeah, well, it really happened. Oh, so he has him, his other guy, he's shot, by the way, in his leg. And he's going, through the ocean, all this stuff.
And shrapnel in his back from the
Yeah.
grenade that he threw back 5 times.
Yeah. I know, man. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting here, and he's sitting right there. That's
Yeah.
the guy who really did that, He's not, of course, acting is cool and dope for real, but that's not an actor.
Yeah.
That's the guy who really did it. Heavy, but that's heavy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So get the book, read about it, read the rest of the details that we barely even scratched the surface on. Also, some other books you can get. You can get a book called Extreme Ownership. It's about leadership.
Yeah.
It teaches you how to lead.
Sure.
It's a book that I wish I had when I was a young leader, but I didn't have it. I wasn't old enough to have written it and given it back to myself yet.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Also, speaking of being young, you can get another book called The Way of the Warrior Kid, which is awesome because kids all over the place, like parents now, when I'm speaking somewhere, they bring their kids.
Yeah.
So I get to meet these kids.
Yeah.
Kids that are getting after it, which is pretty awesome. So, Way of the Warrior Kid. So many kids are like doing pull-ups now.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say,
it's a real thing.
My daughter would be like bothering me, Dad, I want to do pull-ups.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to go.
She didn't get that from reading Cinderella. Cinderella did not make her want to do that, right?
Well,
Right?
I did tell her the story of Cinderella last night. Coincidentally, she really
She
liked
wouldn't want
it.
to do any pull-ups about it, though.
No, it didn't compel her to go do anything. No.
Did it compel her to eat better?
No.
Did it compel her to study hard?
No, she just said it was beautiful. That was
Okay.
it.
So it compelled some thoughts of beauty,
Yeah.
but it didn't compel any change of direction in life.
Nah, no action taken.
I'm going with Way of the Warrior Kid.
Yeah, me too. For sure.
Also, Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual
Mm-hmm.
is coming out. That could compel you
Yeah.
to get after it.
Yeah.
It could. I'd check it out. There's no books like it.
No. And it's like it's a manual. That's
It
the
is a
good
manual.
part.
Yeah.
You know how like when you listen, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, you kind of get a feel, but I like
There's
the
nothing
manual
vague.
part of it.
There's nothing vague about the manual. It tells you what to do.
Yeah.
And it also talks about some thoughts
Yeah.
that are in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting. You can get it. Appreciate it. Also, Origin Maine. You already covered that, which is good.
Mm.
That is now us, by the way. We're partnered. So when you start your jiu-jitsu journey, or if you're on your jiu-jitsu journey, check it out. Come and get it. If you're on the path of getting after it,
Yeah.
do it with us at Origin. And also, if you want to partner with us from a leadership perspective in your business, our business, Echelon Front Leadership Consulting, that's what we do. Me, Leif Babin, JP Donnell, Dave Burke, info@echelonfront.com. Don't Google and look for Jocko speaking, because that's going to give you a speaker's agent. That's going to charge you more money.
Is there something called like a bureau or
Speakers
something?
Bureau, speaker's agent, that's what they do.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
and they're trying to provide a service.
Yeah.
They're trying to connect speakers with people that need speakers.
Yeah.
But we don't need anyone to connect us with people that need speakers. You can go straight to echelonfront.com.
Right.
So that's that. Also, the muster, September 14th and 15th in San Diego. Just to clarify, the first 3 musters were based on the same material because we did it on the west, on the east, and then in the center of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify, now this muster 4, is new material. So it's different. New approaches, new stories. It's not sold out yet, but it will be. So if you want to come, register now, extremeownership.com. And while you're waiting for the muster, if you have a question for us, you can ask that question on the interwebs. We're there. On the Twitter, the Instagram, and that's Facebook. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. Also, Snapchat.
Are you on there?
I am on there, and I posted a snap so far.
One snap.
And it disappears after 24 hours.
Yeah, so you can't go.
And I'm
revisit
still working to figure out like how I'm supposed to utilize this thing.
it. Yeah.
So we'll continue working on that one.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how you can get in touch with us. And finally, to anybody else that's out there who thinks maybe you're being overwhelmed, or you think the deck is stacked against you, or you think you can't go on anymore, think about Mike Thornton. And remember that you are capable of so much more as long as you never give up and keep getting after it. So until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.